guy by the name of Chesterton looked at life as a Christian and said that a person in search of meaning in our world resembles a sailor who awakens from a deep sleep and discovers treasure strewn about, relics from a civilization that he can barely remember. One by one, he picks up the relics, a gold coin, a compass, fine clothing, and tries to discern their meaning. Fallen humanity, the world we live in, is in such a state. We can barely recognize what it means today to be a fully human being. And yet there are a lot of good things on earth, and you know it as well as I do. We miss a lot of it too. Nonetheless, the natural world, beauty, joy, love, friendship, all of these things which are present in our lives every day still bear traces of the original purposes of God and the original presence of God in our lives. Chesterton goes on to talk a little bit about the mysteries of life that we live with all the time also. The suffering that goes with it, sometimes the evil that seems to overtake us, and talks this way about it. He says that even in the midst of suffering and hurt, God responded to Job this way. Talked about the hippopotamus, the crocodile, thunderstorms and blizzards, lionesses and mountain goats, untamed oxen and ostriches, and didn't talk about nature even in its friendly side, because I'm not sure, from what I understand, that you should be meeting a hippopotamus up close and personal, because they might like to take a chunk out of you and have you for lunch. But what he said was this, good insight. We may have limited clues to the secrets of reality and humanity, but what wondrous clues they are. Even mere existence, he writes, reduced to its most primary limits, was extraordinary enough to be exciting. Anything is magnificent as compared with nothing. Now that our world needs as a piece of good news, to recognize the magnificence with which we live every day of our lives. And yet much of the time we only see it as a remnant, or trip over it, or pick up a relic of it. And when Jesus started talking about the Sermon on the Mount, and when he started teaching it at the section we have today, he started talking about the ways in which God has penetrated your life. And sometimes you see only a remnant because we get so distorted in living our lives in ways which are neither healthy or good for us. The image and metaphor of salt. Well, we use it for sprucing up mashed potatoes and other things. A lot of us stay away from salt altogether. In the ancient world, salt was used not only for flavoring and seasoning, but it was also used for preservatives. And it was also used in the worship life at the sacrificial fire in the temple in Jerusalem. Salt in the Old Testament is also often used in place of the words friendship and peace. So when you're realizing the metaphor that Jesus is using about being salt in the world, he's talking about penetrating the world in which you live in some very special and specific ways. To try to bring a sense of peacemaking, of peacekeeping, of recognition, of well-being to the people and friends and family around you, and also the possibility that maybe the world is a little more friendly than we sometimes make it out to be. Friendship, of course, takes time to generate. You know that as well as I do. How long does it take to train a puppy to become a good dog that isn't going to tinkle in your house? How long does it take to make a friend? Probably a lot longer, because you have to go through all of the stages of the acquaintanceship, the reliability, the trustworthiness that goes with it, how much you can share, what the limits are, and all of those kinds of things. And yet salt is always a metaphor of penetration. And it is the way in which Jesus describes that God has penetrated you and me. And that is what we live with every day of our lives, sometimes to greater or lesser degrees. We wrestle with that salt, that penetration of the Spirit in our conscience. And I'm not talking about guilt, so much as the times and occasions when you just have to wrestle whether doing something is worth your time and energy, or whether it's just a big pain in the neck, and whether you want to do it in the first place or not do it at all. You know, how much more can you give without it being an aggravation, and all of that. You're wrestling in your conscience with the Spirit of God who has penetrated your life and your human spirit and your soul. The main question is, as Jesus begins the instruction in the Sermon on the Mount, is how much can you influence and penetrate other people's lives with his good news? And just suggest that that's part of what it means to be a follower of his. Dietrich Bonhoeffer wrote it and said it this way: when Jesus calls you the salt, he brings you into his work. And so you become one who penetrates the lives of other people. Now, light also is a good metaphor because it also penetrates the darkness. I have an array, mostly because while I was in between not watching the Super Bowl but waiting to watch the commercials, which were pretty cool, by the way, I was cleaning up my junk areas. Yes, I have certain areas of stuff. And I found flashlights from when my kids were little, and I could get them for Christmas at the little store, those little flashlight thingies. And I kept thinking about those darn things, and they have saved my bacon I don't know how many times over the years, those dumb little things. One little triple or double A battery. And yet when you think about the need for light when your spotlight has gone out in your front, and you have to make your way through the darkness because it's an overcast night, and you whip out that little flashlight in the glove compartment that you forgot you had, and it guides you ever so delicately, yes, but it guides you with light, penetrating the darkness to your front door. That's the kind of thing that Jesus is using as a metaphor in talking about your faith as a place of light in people's lives. Light is designed to shine, and so is your life is designed to shine. What is one of the major social issues of our day? And I know you could name a zillion of them, especially if you watch the talking heads on Fox and MSNBC. God bless you all for that, because you will not get any truth in there at all. Well, you don't. You just get opinion, and the thing that irritates me is it's not even well-educated opinion. That's the thing that gets me. Their sense of history is just so wrong at every level, and so inaccurate. And there's no way to check it unless you read, and I do. But the one thing they are capable of doing, and the one thing that we live with in our time, which is one of the biggest social dilemmas we have, is factions. The breakup and the separation of people into factions, which have very little to do with faith and humanity, except to diminish our humanity and make us vulnerable to the loud voices of factions backed by money. The question is, your calling and mine as followers of Jesus is to be a different kind of light in the world. The kind of light which penetrates the darkness of people's souls, who are in fact looking for meaning and purpose in life. And so I was cleaning up my little areas, and during the Super Bowl, God bless, it was the first night, I must tell you, in years that I haven't gone to bed with a bellyache. Because I had cod. It was actually very cool. The Super Bowl, I remember it well. Why? I didn't go to bed with a bellyache. Yeah. Sounds silly, doesn't it? And it is silly. But how do you know somebody loves you? Because they buy coffee. Sounds entirely ridiculous. But again, I'll use it as a metaphor for living and for life and for light. And as Jesus was talking about the function of light in life, he was talking about the ways in which you can bring light into the darkness of the factions and the hatred and the revulsion that TV and personalities bring into our world, our leaders, supposedly mature and thoughtful, tearing and ripping each other apart like rabid dogs. And what is it that you can bring as light to that kind of world? Pleasure. Pleasure. I was talking to one of our college students, or no, graduate, who's living out of state, and she was so excited. I was on the phone calling around this week, just checking in on people, and she was so excited because her roommate had gotten a used TV from her brother who didn't need it anymore, big old moose, brought it, and they were able to watch the Olympics, the opening of the Olympics. And they were so excited. Pleasure. Silly little thing, no? But pleasure. In the midst of a rather difficult life for all of them, because they're both working 2 jobs, neither of which pays enough to really make it, which is standard anymore, and needing desperately moments of pleasure and laughter, getting in touch with a more full sense of humanity and their own humanness. And if watching the Olympics and the wonderful fireworks can do that, well, God bless the Lord for having created the people who could have thought it up to make it happen. Now, where does pleasure come from? Pleasure comes, first of all, from the Lord. It's part of who He is and what He is and how He creates and why He created. After each day of creation, what did He say? He was pleased. Yeah. And that's one of the good gifts that you have to bring as a person of light into a world which is getting more and more mean-spirited. A sense of the pleasure of life. Rather than wag our fingers all of the times at the obvious stupidity of the other side, and of the factions that are created therewith, and of the money that underpins all of that sort of stuff, sometimes we have to take the time out. And you have all done that at different times in conversation. I know you have. Where you've been able to bring a sentence in, where you've been able to bring a different perspective to that conversation or that person's life, and given them a more thoughtful way to approach it, to go after what they're thinking and thinking about for the future. And perhaps evil's greatest triumph and its greatest success is making religion into a very negative sort of thing, like it is today in the public sphere, as you well know. That's not the kind of religion that Jesus taught. What He teaches us today is that we've been penetrated by the Holy Spirit as salt, and it's internal to us now, and that we're going to wrestle in our consciences by design with how we are going to present the love of God to the world. That's why He uses the metaphor of light, to bring a certain lightness to people's lives. Now, how you choose to go about doing that, of course, depends on your circumstances and how best you see able to do that. But that is the gift that you carry with you every day of your life. A sense of light to a world which really needs it very desperately. That's your gift, and that's what's been given to you and what you pass on. Amen. Amen.